Channeled message.
It never gave fear. It was never fear that kept them from being confrontational. It was fearlessness that kept them from performing. They did not need to sing. They did not need to fight for attention. They did not need to gather a crowd, build a case for approval, or recruit a gaggle of broken people to stand behind them just to do what their spirit was already clear about. They saw what it was. They saw the deception. They saw the ego. They saw the game beneath the surface, and they made a decision without needing applause for it. That is what people do not understand. Some people only know how to move when they have validation. They need consensus. They need cheerleading. They need backup. They need noise around them to feel certain that they are doing the right thing. They need an audience to feel brave. But real character does not work like that. Real character does what is right in silence when no one is watching. Real spirit moves when the truth is clear. Real self-respect does not wait for permission. They did not need a community to co-sign their exit. They did not need support, a squad, or any of that to confirm what their soul had already registered. They did not need anybody to hold their hand while they chose dignity over confusion. They simply saw that the situation was beneath them and refused to keep standing in it. That is not weakness. That is internal authority. They were not competing with anybody. They were not trying to win a position. They were not about to reduce themselves to a participant in somebody else's self-esteem ritual just because deception wanted attention. They bowed out gracefully because they were strong enough to leave without a spectacle. And that kind of strength unsettles people because weak people usually mistake noise for power. Weak people usually mistake noise for power. They think confrontation only counts if it is loud. They think courage has to be public. They think if someone walks away quietly, they must have been scared. No. Sometimes the most fearless thing a person can do is decline the whole arena. Not because they cannot fight. It's not that. Because they do not need to. Because they are not driven by ego. They are driven by alignment, by purpose, by spirit, by character. And none of those things require an audience. That is why there was no need to go back and forth, no need to prove anything, no need to drag the situation out so other people could witness, pick sides, and be entertained. They knew what they saw. They knew what it meant, and they knew enough about themselves not to stay where love and respect had to be contaminated. That is fearless. Fearless is not always loud. Fearless is clean. Sometimes fearless is final. Fearless is looking deception in the face, saying nothing, and removing access forever. Other people may have thought they won something in that moment. They got the silence, they got the distance, they got the space they created. But they also lost what they had. What walked away was not weak, confused, or indecisive. What walked away was someone with enough self-command to leave the moment truth made itself plain. That kind of person does not need to gather a crowd to validate their moral instincts. They do not need people clapping for them to choose what their spirit requires. They do not need to be propped up by gossip, factions, or group approval to stand out on principle. They can stand alone. And people who need numbers to feel powerful will truly never fully understand that kind of strength. Truly. That is why the silence bothers them. That is why the graceful exit bothers them. That is why the lack of chaos bothers them. because they were expecting a performance, a grand show. They were expecting emotional scrambling. They were expecting somebody desperate enough to fight for a place in something dishonest. Instead, they met somebody who loved themselves enough to let it go. Let that shit go. That is a different kind of power. And once someone makes that kind of decision from character, spirit, and self-respect, there is no reason to reopen the door. It's not that they're afraid. It's not that they're angry. It's what was revealed changed the value of the entire situation. Once truth exposes the structure, there is nothing left to negotiate. So yes, they bowed out gracefully. Yes, they let the other person keep the mess they created. Yes, they walked away without needing a crowd, a committee, or a chorus of approval. And that is exactly why the decision stands. It was not made out of ego. It was made out of clarity, from self-respect, from fearless alignment with what their soul, spirit, and character required. And when a person can do that alone, without fanfare, without validation, and without needing to be carried by a crowd, they are already operating at a level most people cannot reach.
End of message.